I think I'm very popular in your country.
People have to understand our country on trade has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world, whether it's friend or enemy.
From the busy streets of New York City to the prestigious halls of the White House and through the turbulent waters of post-presidency controversies unfolds the story of Donald John Trump. This story follows a journey through big businesses, top politics, and differing public views.
Resistance is powerful!
Let's explore the life of a man who became a symbol of a divided America, a unique era, and a figure with a debated yet undeniable legacy. Donald John Trump was born on June 14, 1946, at Jamaica Hospital in Queens, New York City, the fourth child of Fred Trump and Mary Ann McLeod Trump. Trump grew up with older siblings, Mary Ann, Fred Jr., and Elizabeth, and a younger brother, Robert, in the Jamaica Estates neighborhood of Queens, and attended the private Kew Forest School from kindergarten through 7th grade. In 1964, at age 13, he entered the New York Military Academy.
Success is a very important thing. It's certainly been very important to me. And I can tell you that one of the great choices I ever made in terms of success was the choice of going to NYMA, New York Military Academy. I've loved it. It was terrific training. It was tough, but it was good.
2 years later, he transferred to the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, graduating in May 1968 with a Bachelor of Science in Economics. While in college, Trump obtained 4 student draft deferments during the Vietnam War. In 1971, his father named him president of his real estate business. Trump renamed it the Trump Organization and reoriented the company toward building and renovating skyscrapers, hotels, casinos, and golf courses. After a series of business failures in the late 20th century, he successfully launched side ventures that required little capital, mostly by licensing the Trump name. From 2004 to 2015, he co-produced and hosted the reality television series,
My name is Donald
The
Trump, and I'm the
Apprentice.
largest developer in New York.
Who will succeed? Who will fail? And who will be the apprentice?
He and his businesses have been plaintiffs or defendants in more than 4,000 state and federal legal actions, including 6 business bankruptcies. The Trump Organization is an American privately owned conglomerate owned by Donald Trump. It serves as the holding company for all of Trump's business ventures and investments, with around 250 of its affiliates and subsidiaries using the Trump name. Donald Trump joined the organization in 1968, began leading it in 1971, and handed off its leadership to his children in 2017 after he won the 2016 United States presidential election. The Trump Organization, through its various constituent companies and partnerships, has or has had interests in real estate development, investing, sales and marketing, and property management.
His business condition was terrible, worse than terrible. We were in a deep recession and people weren't going to Atlantic City. So the revenue stream from Atlantic City, the Taj Mahal, and the other casinos was poor.
Trump Organization entities also own the New York Television Production Company that produced the reality television franchise, The Apprentice.
The Apprentice.
Since the financial statements of the Trump Organization's holdings and Donald Trump's personal tax returns are both private, its true value is not publicly known, though a wide range of estimates have been made. Trump has publicly released little definitive financial documentation to confirm his valuation claims. On several occasions, Trump has been accused of deliberately inflating the valuation of Trump Organization properties through aggressive lobbying of the media to bolster his perceived net worth. By 2019, the Trump Organization was being scrutinized by New York investigators for possible financial fraud. In August 2022, the organization's chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, pleaded guilty to committing more than a dozen felonies, including criminal tax fraud and grand larceny,
by rewarding them off the books with perks and fringe benefits that could have been reported as income. Weisselberg is accused of avoiding paying taxes on $1.7 million.
In September 2022, New York Attorney General Letitia James announced a civil lawsuit against the organization. A separate criminal case by the Manhattan District Attorney was brought to trial in
President
October.
Trump, the Manhattan DA, informing the former president's lawyers that they're considering filing criminal charges against the Trump organization as early as next week. Pierre Thomas has late reporting tonight. Pierre?
David, the investigation involves whether or not the president's family business paid taxes on certain fringe benefits given to employees or family members, ranging from cars and apartments to private school tuition. Tonight, sources are telling us an indictment could come on the Trump organization as soon as next week. But an attorney for the Trump organization is saying it's all completely outrageous.
In September 2023, the judge presiding over the civil suit ruled that Trump, his adult sons, and the organization repeatedly committed fraud and ordered their New York business certificates canceled and their business entities sent into receivership for dissolution in what has been described by observers as a corporate death penalty. Trump and the organization were ordered to pay nearly $355 million before interest in February 2024, with further restrictions placed on the Trump organization's business certificates and on both Trump and his adult son's ability to do business in New York.
Correct.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States. So help me God.
Trump won the 2016 presidential election as the Republican Party nominee against Democratic Party nominee Hillary Clinton, while losing the popular vote. During the campaign, his political positions were described as populist, protectionist, isolationist, and nationalist.
And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
His election and policies sparked numerous protests against him. He was the first U.S. president with no prior military or government experience. A special counsel investigation established that Russia had interfered in the 2016 election to favor Trump's campaign.
At all on the outcome of the election. Let me be totally clear in saying that, and I've said this many times, I accept our intelligence community's conclusion that Russia's meddling in the 2016 election took place.
Trump promoted conspiracy theories and made many false and misleading statements during his campaigns and presidency to a degree unprecedented in American politics.
The American dream is dead. But if I get elected president, I will bring it back bigger and better and stronger than ever before, and we will make America great again.
Make America Great Again is the American political slogan and movement most notably popularized by Donald Trump during his successful 2016 presidential campaign. The slogan became a pop culture phenomenon, seeing widespread use and spawning numerous variants in the arts, entertainment, and politics, being used by both those who support and those who oppose Trump's presidency. Originally used by Ronald Reagan as a campaign slogan in his 1980 presidential campaign,
"We'll restore hope and we'll welcome them into a great national crusade to make America great again."
It has since been described as a loaded phrase. Multiple journalists, scholars, and commentators have called the slogan racist, regarding it as dog whistle politics and coded language.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
As president, Trump diverted military funding toward building a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border and implemented a policy of family separations for migrants detained at the U.S. border.
USA. And they were drowned out by the presidential hopeful who's now dominating the Republican race.
The poll just came out, and I'm tied with Jeb Bush. And I said, oh, that's too bad. How can I be tied with this guy? He's terrible.
Supporters and opponents are equally vocal.
We're here in force to tell him, go home. We don't need you. Your racist comments.
Numerous companies have ended partnerships with Trump after his comment about Mexican immigrants. But the billionaire businessman isn't backing down.
They're taking everything and they're killing us on the border.
Trump initiated a trade war with China and withdrew the U.S. from the proposed Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, and the Iran nuclear deal. He met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 3 times, but made no progress on denuclearization.
It'll be the greatest rigged election in history. It'll be the greatest fraud ever perpetrated, because the only way they're going to win is by a rigged election. I really believe that.
Trump refused to concede after losing the 2020 presidential election to Joe Biden, falsely claiming widespread electoral fraud, and attempted to overturn the results by pressuring government officials, mounting scores of unsuccessful legal challenges, and obstructing the presidential transition.
The people in Georgia are mad. They know their votes were stolen.
Georgia, of the 6 states I looked at, is a cesspool.
Georgia's probably going to be the first state I'm going to blow up, and the Secretary of State need to go with it.
On January 6, 2021, he urged his supporters to march to the U.S. Capitol, which many of them then attacked, resulting in multiple deaths and interrupting the electoral vote count.
If we lose any more time, we may lose the ability to leave.
Our country and our Constitution.
Trump is the only American president to have been impeached twice. After he tried to pressure Ukraine in 2019 to investigate Biden, he was impeached by the House of Representatives for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. He was acquitted by the Senate in February 2020.
At the time of the call, the Trump administration was withholding $250 million in military aid to Ukraine that Congress had already approved.
The House impeached him again in January 2021 for incitement of insurrection. The Senate acquitted him in February.
Our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
Since leaving office, Trump has continued to dominate the Republican Party and is a candidate in the 2024 Republican presidential primaries. In 2023, a civil trial jury found that Trump was liable for sexually abusing E. Jean Carroll. In 2024, a New York State court found Trump liable for financial fraud. Trump is appealing both judgments. He was also indicted in New York on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records, and in Florida on 40 felony counts related to his mishandling of classified documents. Trump pleaded not guilty to all charges. In February 2017, Trump's new national security advisor, Michael Flynn, was forced to resign after press reports disclosed that Flynn had continued to serve in the White House despite a warning from the Justice Department that he was vulnerable to Russian blackmail for having lied to Vice President Pence about the substance of a telephone conversation between Flynn and the Russian ambassador to the United States in December 2016.
Breaking news. Donald Trump's national security advisor Michael Flynn has resigned tonight, just 1 month into his tenure, amid growing concerns about his contact with the Russian ambassador and whether he misled Vice President Pence about whether sanctions against Russia were discussed. Flynn wrote in his resignation letter, "Unfortunately, because of the fast pace of events, I inadvertently briefed the vice president-elect and others with incomplete information regarding my phone calls with the Russian ambassador." The retired lieutenant general added, added, I have sincerely apologized to the president and the vice president, and they have accepted my apology.
Flynn's contacts with the ambassador, both before and after the election, had been monitored by the FBI as part of its routine surveillance of the ambassador's communications and in connection with a then-secret investigation since July 2016 of possible collusion between Russian officials and prominent members of the Trump campaign.
And he's the young man whose name many of us had never heard before. Now, George Papadopoulos is at the red-hot center of the Russia investigation, and tonight a new report on how he first came onto the FBI's radar. Here's ABC's David Wright.
Tonight, new reporting about how U.S. authorities may have first learned about Russia's attempts to meddle in the 2016 election, reportedly because of what a former Trump campaign advisor told an Australian diplomat at this London wine bar in May of 2016. According to the New York Times, Trump advisor George Papadopoulos boasted to Australia's ambassador to the UK, Alexander Downer, that Russia had political dirt on Hillary Clinton. The Australians eventually passed that tip on to U.S. authorities. According to the paper, that was reportedly 2 months later, about the time that hacked DNC emails started appearing online. Papadopoulos, who recently pled guilty to lying to the FBI, was part of the Trump campaign's national security and foreign policy team, seen here at a meeting with candidate Trump.
Speculation in the press regarding the existence of the investigation had been repeatedly dismissed by Trump as fake news, but was confirmed by Comey in testimony before the House Intelligence Committee in March 2017.
Our practice is not to confirm the existence of ongoing investigations, especially those investigations that involve classified matters. But in unusual circumstances, where it is in the public interest, it may be appropriate to do so, as Justice Department policies recognize. This is one of those circumstances. I have been authorized by the Department of Justice to confirm that the FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And that includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russia's efforts. As with any counterintelligence investigation, this will also include an assessment of whether any crimes were committed.
During which he also contradicted Trump's claim that Obama had spied on the Trump campaign by tapping Trump's telephones.
With respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets, and we have looked carefully inside the FBI. The Department of Justice has asked me to share with you that the answer is the same for the Department of Justice and all its components. The department has no information that supports those tweets.
After Comey testified again in May about Russian interference in the election, Trump abruptly fired him, ostensibly on the recommendation of the Justice Department, which in memos solicited by Trump, criticized Comey for his public disclosures regarding Clinton's emails.
The FBI has just sent a letter to Congress informing them that they have discovered new emails pertaining to the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's investigation. And they are reopening the case into her criminal and illegal conduct that threatens the security of the United States of America.
Trump soon acknowledged that he had intended to fire Comey, regardless of the Justice Department's recommendation, and that this Russia thing was a factor in his decision. Later that month, the press obtained a copy of a memo written by Comey that summarized a conversation between Comey and Trump at a dinner at the White House in January.
Prior to the firing, this happened early on in the administration. Listen to what he said.
He told me that. I mean, he told me
He
that.
told you you weren't under investigation with regard to the Russia investigation?
I've heard that from others. I think.
Was it in a phone call? Did you meet face to face?
I had a dinner with him. He wanted to have dinner because he wanted to stay on. We had a very nice dinner at the White House very early on. A dinner was arranged. I think he asked for the dinner. And he wanted to stay on as the FBI head. And I said, I'll consider. We'll see what happens. But we had a very nice dinner. And at that time, he told me, you are not under investigation.
The memo stated that Trump had asked Comey to pledge loyalty to him.
And that the dinner was an effort to build a relationship, in fact, he asked specifically, of loyalty in the context of asking me to stay. And as I said, what was odd about that is we'd already talked twice about it by that point, and he'd said, I very much hope you'll stay. I hope you'll stay. In fact, I just remembered sitting here a third one. When you've seen the picture of me walking across the Blue Room, and what the president whispered in my ear was, I really look forward to working with you.
The memo immediately raised concerns, even among some Republicans, that Trump's actions might have constituted obstruction of justice. The Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, then announced the appointment of former FBI Director Robert Mueller as special counsel to oversee the FBI's investigation of Russian interference in the election and possible collusion between Russian officials and the Trump campaign, which Rosenstein's appointment order characterized as any links and/or coordination between the Russian government and individuals associated with the campaign of President Donald Trump. Mueller was also authorized to investigate and prosecute any federal crimes arising directly from or committed in the course of the investigation, including obstruction of justice, perjury, destruction of evidence, and witness intimidation. Comey's testimony in June before the Senate Intelligence Committee, which, like the House Intelligence Committee, was conducting its own investigation, was broadcast live on television,
James Comey was
radio,
everywhere today,
and the
watched
internet.
by commuters on a San Francisco Bay ferry and patrons in a Miami cigar bar.
To deny those reports.
It was 7 a.m. on the West Coast when the Senate hearing began, but at Ace's bar in San Francisco, the TVs were turned up and the crowd was tuned in. Heidi Zuhl dropped by on her way to work.
I don't come to bars, frankly, at 7 o'clock on Thursday mornings.
I'm surprised.
But I wanted to see who my neighbors were, and I wanted to see how everybody reacted.
Americans seem compelled to experience the hearing with others.
Early in July 2017, the press reported that in June 2016, senior members of the Trump campaign, including its chairperson Paul Manafort, as well as Jared Kushner and Trump's son Donald Jr., had met secretly in Trump Tower with a lawyer associated with the Russian government. In response, Donald Jr. issued a statement in which he claimed that the meeting had primarily concerned adoptions of Russian children by Americans, and that he had not known in advance who on the Russian side would be attending. 3 days later, the press reported the existence of emails predating the meeting in which the British publicist Rob Goldstone notified Donald Jr. that the Russian government possessed incriminating documents and information on Clinton and offered to set up a meeting to convey them through a Russian government attorney. Attendance at such a meeting was potentially a crime under U.S. campaign finance law, which generally prohibits accepting or soliciting foreign assistance in connection with a U.S. election.
Robert Mueller has submitted his report.
And in October 2017, the Mueller investigation announced a plea agreement with Papadopoulos in which he admitted to lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russian nationals.
What is it that Special Counsel Robert Mueller knows?
Now there's this new reporting from the Wall Street Journal reporting that Special Counsel Robert Mueller
has issued subpoenas.
This morning, unsealing a guilty plea.
Trump campaign foreign policy aide George Papadopoulos
pled guilty to lying about Russian contacts.
Former Trump aide George Papadopoulos.
Later that month, the Mueller team also unveiled a 12-count indictment against Manafort and his associate Rick Gates, charging them with money laundering, tax evasion, and bank fraud.
Manafort and his former business associate Rick Gates were told
As part of a plea agreement with prosecutors, Flynn pleaded guilty in federal district court to lying to the
House
FBI.
National Security Advisor Michael Flynn has pleaded guilty to lying.
In January 2018, President Trump's legal team acknowledged in a memo to the Mueller investigation that Trump himself had dictated the initial false account of the meeting, contradicting earlier statements by his attorneys and by White House press secretaries. In August 2018, Trump admitted via Twitter that the purpose of the meeting was to get information on an opponent, but insisted that the encounter was perfectly legal, that no information was forthcoming, and that he did not know about the meeting in advance. He also, for the first time, publicly, on Twitter, called upon Attorney General Jeff Sessions to put an end to the Russia investigation by firing Mueller, a power, however, that Sessions did not possess, having recused himself in March 2017 after revelations of his previously undisclosed contacts with the Russian ambassador as a member of the Trump campaign in September 2016. Also in February 2018, the Mueller investigation indicted 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian organizations on charges of conspiring to defraud the United States by interfering in its political and electoral processes, including the 2016 election.
A grand jury in the District of Columbia today returned an indictment presented by the Special Counsel's Office. The indictment charges 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies for committing federal crimes while seeking to interfere in the United States political system, including the 2016 presidential election. The defendants allegedly conducted what they called information warfare against the United States, with the stated goal of spreading distrust towards the candidates and the political system in general. According to the allegations in the indictment, 12 of the individual defendants worked at various times for a company called Internet Research Agency, LLC, a Russian company based in St. Petersburg. The other individual defendant, Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin, funded the conspiracy through companies known as Concord Management and Consulting, LLC, Concord Catering, and many affiliates and subsidiaries. The conspiracy was part of a larger operation called Project Lakda.
Last month, former President Donald Trump picked up his fundraising, but his political operation is still struggling to catch up to President Joe Biden and the Democratic Party in money coming in. Trump's campaign and his Save America Political Action Committee, 2 key committees in his political operation, reported raising a combined $15.9 million in February and ended the month with more than $37 million on hand, according to filings with the Federal Election Commission Wednesday night. Trump has an early lead on Biden, but problems are piling up around him. Missteps and unresolved policy problems are mounting for the former president. Donald Trump is walking back recent comments about cutting Social Security. He's searching for an elusive abortion message that will offend neither anti-abortion voters nor suburban moderates. He's inviting negative news cycles with claims that Jewish Democrats hate their religion and warnings of a coming auto industry bloodbath. And to top it off, he's low on campaign cash and doesn't have the personal fortune to post a bond in the civil fraud judgment against him in New York. The former president may be up in the polls, seemingly in the driver's seat against a deeply unpopular incumbent. But problems, including many of his own making, are piling up around him. and his first 2 weeks as his party's presumptive nominee have revealed old tendencies and new vulnerabilities that, taken in totality, amount to a rocky start to his general election campaign against Joe Biden. Despite it all, Trump remains in an enviable position, leading Biden in early polls as the incumbent president clocks in with historically bad approval ratings. But Trump's advantage is also less than 2 percentage points, hardly a commanding lead. In the earliest days of the general election campaign, Trump's often improvised remarks contrast with his opponent's more carefully scripted campaign outings, and that approach brings some downsides, as evidenced in recent days. As this part of American history ends, we think about the lasting effect of a presidency that broke rules and questioned traditions. Donald Trump went from being a wealthy real estate mogul to the top of power, and then faced legal and political fights. His story makes us wonder about how politics will be discussed, if democracy will stay strong, and what the American dream will mean in the future.